Good day, ladies and gentlemen. This is Sarah van Grenen, aka Mr. VG, and I am here to talk to you about one of the most exciting but kind of scary chapters in your grade 8 and 9 curriculum, which is about exponents. But before we get to why it is so scary, it is important that you understand this chapter not just for now, but for going forward. It is going to form the basics of all mathematics we are going to do from grade 9, but especially grade 10, 11, 12. Almost every single chapter is going to have exponents or an application of exponents in them. So it is really crucial. But what makes exponents difficult is it's one of those chapters where I'm going to tell you to not follow your instinct every time. I know that's not necessarily what you want to hear, but that's what makes exponents difficult, is that you cannot just do the first thing that pops up in your mind. You are going to have to follow sets of rules, procedures, etc., instead of just following your instincts. But before we get to those difficult concepts, I want us to just explore exponents on a very basic, almost superficial manner. So let's start by looking at what is the link between plus, in other words, adding numbers together, and multiplication. If I look at 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3, what is a shorter way of writing that? Now I'm giving you a tip. Multiplication. Well, I can say there are 5 threes, so 3 times by 5. What if I give you 2 plus 2 plus 2? What would be a shorter way of writing that? Well, 2 times by 3, okay? This is interesting because this is actually leading us towards exponents, because there's also now going to be a link between multiplication and exponents. So when I look at this, what if I give you 3 times 3 times 3 times 3 times 3? It almost looks the same as previously, right? But instead of having additions between the threes, I write multiplications. So now it's a product sum. The beautiful thing about exponents is the same as you could do with multiplication, you can now do with exponents. In other words, instead of having to write out 3 5s, I can say this is 3 to the power of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So exponents is a shortcut for writing multiplication. So it's a way of writing big multiplication sums in a much smaller way. What if I give you 2 times 3 or 2 times 2 times 2? You try it. Quickly write it down. It's going to be 2 to the power of 1, 2, 3, because there are 3 2s. Again, it's taking a potentially big sum, 2 times 2 times 2, and making it smaller. Now, when we're working with small exponents like this, you can argue, yeah, but sir, do I really have to do it? And the answer is yes, because exponents is going to be everywhere in mathematics, all right? Now, what we need to start doing is investigating certain properties of exponents, okay? So to start with the properties, we need to start with a definition. If I look at 5 to the 4, that is exponential form. If I want to write it out in full form, I'm going to say it's 5 times 5 times 5. So there are 4 5s that are being multiplied with each other. So in other words, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 5s. And remember, it is the 5 that's being multiplied there every single time. Now, this is really basic, but it is really, really crucial you understand this. So if you want to go from exponential form to the full written out form, that is what we are going to do. Now, what if I've got x to the 3? Now you see another notation for multiplication. Instead of saying times, we can say dot. Okay, x dot x dot x, which in our syllabus means multiplication. Now, I don't want to write times simply because it can be confusing when you're working with x's. What is an x? What is a times? So we rather put the dot there. There are 3 of them because it's x to the 3. X squared, also I can write as x multiplied by x. Now what about x to the 1? Well, that means there's just 1x. And this is, interestingly enough, one of the first definitions or properties that you are going to learn. That if I've got any number that doesn't have an exponent, it actually has an exponent of 1. And this is going to be important in our future videos because a lot of times there'll just be a number or a variable and without an exponent. And I'm going to tell you, write the exponent there. You've got to put it there. Otherwise, we can't complete the sum. Now, let's go and have a look, ladies and gents, at this interesting little question. If x to the 1 is x, then what does x to the power of 0 give me? Now, here's where life becomes interesting. Let's investigate this a little bit. I'm going to start with the basics of 5 to the 3. Now, 5 to the 3 is simply 5 times 5 times 5. We know that. The same we can say with 5 to the 2. It's just 5 times 5. And 5 to the 1, we just said, is 5. So let's see if there's kind of a pattern that follows. On the left-hand side, I keep on subtracting 1 from the exponent. I get 3, then it becomes 2, 1, then 0. What's happening on the right-hand side? You can kind of, if you want to say, I take away a 5. But that's not actually what's happening. What's actually is happening is we are dividing by 5 every time on the right-hand side. If I go again and I divide 5 times 5 by a 5, I'm left with a 5. So what's going to happen if I divide again by a 5? I get 1. And there, ladies and gentlemen, you have one of your most interesting properties of exponents, is that anything to the power of 0 is 1, except for 0 to the power of 0. Now, 0 to the power of 0, in our curriculum, we say it's undefined. The reason why we say undefined is to avoid confusion, okay? Because there's a whole branch of mathematicians that say, but isn't 0 to the 0 just 0? Isn't 0 to the power of 0 maybe 1 if I look at this definition? But that wouldn't make sense because 0 to the power of anything is just 0. So to avoid the confusion, ladies and gents, we are going to say that anything to the power of 0 is undefined. And please go and learn this. This brings me, ladies and gents, to the very important part of this video, where we are going to talk about terminology. In other words, what words are we going to use? Which words are we going to use in this chapter? Well, if I've got 5 to the power of 4, I see two things. First of all, I see the 5, and we are going to call that the base. Then we see the 4, and we are going to call that the exponent. In some other curriculums, like the American and some of the British curriculum, they call it an index, but it means the same thing. The whole 5 raised to the power of 4, we call a power. We call it a power. So the whole 5 raised to the exponent of 4, we call a power. So in future, when we say you multiply 2 powers, it means multiplying like a 5 to the 4 with a 3 to the power of 2. The whole 5 to the 4, the whole 3 to the 2, both of them are powers. Don't confuse these terminologies. Otherwise, you're going to struggle in the rest of this chapter. Now, ladies and gents, tune in to our next video where we are going to go into the first law of exponents. Yes, there are 4 laws that you are going to have to master. But you can do it. I know it. I've got faith in you. This is Mr. VG signing out. Cheers.